Hi everyone, in this video I will explain each topic we studied during the last classes, how they are used and why these are important for our communication. I will describe each concept in an easy way to understand, using simple explanation, just like a teacher would in a classroom, so that everything is clear and easy to follow. To start, we are going to talk about the vocabulary that was used during the term. To do this, I am going to go over each word with its meaning and a corresponding example for the most important vocabulary. For example, did you do means lo hiciste. For example, did you do your homework? Poultry means aves de corral. For example, they sell fresh poultry at the market. Hairdo means peinado. For example, her hairdo looks great today. From scratch means desde cero. For example, we made the cake from scratch. Belong to means pertenecer. For example, this phone belongs to my dad. By means of means mediante. For example, they send it by means of mail. Eh, Shoot the hell up means cállate la jeta. For example, he said shoot the hell up loudly. Shoot the fuck up means cierra la puta boca. For example, he shook the fuck up. Would you mind doing me a favor? Means ¿te importaría hacerme un favor? For example, would you mind doing me a favor? Intercourse means relaciones sexuales. For example, they talked about safe intercourse. Interclass games means juegos entre clases. For example, we won the interclass games. Break a leg means mucha suerte. For example, break a leg in your performance. Perhaps means quizás. For example, perhaps he will come later. Finally, praise means alabar. And example is they praise him for his work. And worship means orar. For example, they worship every Sunday. Now we move on the prepositions at, in, and on. These small words are very important because they help you express place and time correctly. As we can observe in the table from the slides, each preposition has specific situations where it must be used. For at, we use this preposition for at a point, top, bottom, end of, group activities, school, university, home, work, shops, specific time, and holiday period. For example, at the mailbox, at the top of the mountain, at the end of the hallway, at the workshop, at a football match, at museum tour, at hike library, at my workspace, at the bakery, at the clothing shop, at 6 o'clock, at noon, at Easter, at Carnival, and more. In we use this preposition for in a three-dimensional space, for example, in the garage, in the elevator, in the waiting room, for territory, whole Mexico, in Colombia, in my neighborhood, for car or a van, for example, in a taxi, in the Uber, for water, for example, in the ocean, on the fountain, for printed material, for example, in a comic book, in a newspaper, for months, years, centuries, seasons, and time periods, for example, in April, in October, in 2025, in the 20th century, in the winter, in the last summer, in a 1 hour. Finally, we use on for surfaces, floor, right and left, public transport, media, and days, weekends, and dates. For example, on the balcony, on the counter, on the fridge door, on the second floor, on the rooftop level, on the right side, on the left corner, on the metro, on the ferry, on the tram, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Monday morning, on the Thursday night, on Saturday afternoon, on March 3rd, on December 10th. Now, moving on the perfect cognates. Perfect cognates are very friendly words for learners because they almost always look exactly the same in English and in Spanish, and they also share the same meaning. The only thing that usually changes is the pronunciation, but the spelling stays the same. These words help us learn faster because we already recognize them from Spanish. So the idea is simple. If the spelling is the same and the meaning is the same, then it is as perfect cognates. I will now read some examples of these words. Animal, area, auto, balance, capital, chocolate, confusion, criminal, decisions, dimension, doctor, drama, explosion, final, flexible, general, horror, individual, invisible, legal, literal, mango, manual, material, mental, normal, oriental, particular, peculiar, personal, radio, regular, simply, terrible, total, tropical, universal, virgin, visible, visual, and more examples. And we continue with the semi-perfect cognates. These are also help use because they look very similar in both languages, but they have small change in spelling or pronunciation. In class, we studied 15 rules that show how certain endings or parts of word change from Spanish to English. These rules helps use identify patterns, and when we learn the pattern, it becomes easier to guess the meaning of new word in English. So the purpose of these rules is to help use vocabulary more quickly. The rule number one is to change edad to iri. For example, activity, creativity, curiosity, diversity, electricity, identity, nationality, possibility, security. The rule number two is to change eco to ic, academic, automatic, artistic, scientific, dynamic, electric, fantastic, romantic, basic, and alcoholic. The rule number three is to change also to os. For example, curious, delicious, fabulous, famous, furious, generous, mysterious, nervous, tedious, and posonous. The rule number four is to change uh, act to act. For example, act, contact, compact, contract, conflict, correct, defect, exact, insect, and product. The rule number five is to change sion to tion. For example, application, action, celebration, collection, combination, condition, education, information, invitation, and variation. The rule number six is to change al to al, for example, tropical, abdominal, accidental, additional, animal, bilateral, canal, capital, brutal, casual, computational, diagonal, differential, essential, spiral, exceptional, traditional, usual, decimal, crucial, gradual, habitual, ideal, impartial, judicial, social, integral, local, manual, mortal, sensual, and virtual. The rule number seven is to change R to R, for example, altar, cellular, familiar, regular, secular, similar, solar, and vulgar. The rule number eight is to change ario to ari, for example, extraordinary, glossary, hereditary, imaginary, necessary, primary, salary, vocabulary. The rule number nine is to change R to 8 in the verbs. For example, activate, collaborate, communicate, complicate, consolidate, coordinate, demonstrate, and more examples. The rule number 10 is to change play to play. For example, adjustable, audible, cable, cancelable, comprehensible, considerable, destructible, differentiable, double, flexible, horrible, impossible, incredible, unstable, navigable, possible, visible, and more examples. The rule number 11 is to change or to or, for example, actor, author, color, director, error, factor, honor, interior, pastor, and valor. The rule number 12 is to change IA to E. For example, academy, agency, agony, archaeology, battery, biography, company, colony, comprehensive, copy, efficacy, energy, envy, efficacy, fallacy, photography, and history. The rule number 13 is to change mento to ment. For example, argument, document, element, experiment, instrument, monument, pavement, pigment, and sediment. The rule number 14 is to change ente to end. For example, migrant, assailtant, coefficient, brilliant, coherent, coincident, decent, deficient, dissonant, incumbent, efficacement, elephant, excellent, gallant, gigant, immigrant, monument, and more examples. Finally, the rule number 15 is to change mente to li. For example, absolutely, correctly, directly, especially, evidently, finally, immediately, really, totally, and normally.
Irregular verbs are verbs whose form change in the present, past, and past participle in ways that do not follow the usual rules. Unlike regular verbs, their grammar and pronunciation can be completely different, so they must be learned individually. Among them, we can find the following. Ser o estar. Be, was, were, been. Convertirse. Became. Romper. Break, broke, broken. Hacer. Do, did, done. Beber. Drink, drank, drunk. Comer. Eat, ate, eaten. Entregar, get, got, gotten. Ir, go, went, gone. Saber, know, knew, know. Hacer, make, made, made. Leer, read, read, read. Correr, run, run, run. Ver, see, saw, seen. Hablar, speak, spoke, spoken. Ganar, win, won, won. Soñar, dream, dream, dreamt. Sangrar, bleed, bled, bled. Soplar, blow, blew, blown. Congelar, freeze, frost, frozen. Comenzar, begin, began, begun. Comprar, buy, bought, bought. Venir, come, came, come. Manejar, drive, drove, driven. Pelear, fight, fought, fought. Crecer, grow, grew, grown. Irse, left, left, left. Conocer, meet, met, met. Decir, said, said, say, said, said. Dormir, slept, slept, slept. Nadar, swim, swam, swam. Tomar, take, took, taken. Pensar, think, talk, talked. Levantarse, wake, woke, woken. Escribir, write, wrote, written. Emprender, undertake, understood, understood, undertaken. Cerrar, shoot, shut, shut. Iluminar, shin, shone, shone. Traer, bring, brought, brought. Construir, build, 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 build. Escoger, choose, chosen. Costear, cost, cost, cost. Cortar, cut, cut, cut. Dibujar, draw, drew, drawn. Sentir, feel, felt, felt. Buscar, find, found, found. Volar, fly, flew, flow, flown. Tener, have, had, had. Sostener, keep, kept, kept. Permitir, let, let, let. Perder, lose, lost, lost. Cantar, sing, sing, song. Decir, tell, told, told. Barrer, sweep, soft, sweat. Equivocarse, mistake, mistook, mistaken. Sudar, sweat, sweat, sweat. Para, catch, caught, caught. Olvidar, forget, forgot, forgotten. Regalar, give, give, given. Golpear, hit, hit, hit. Cortar o herir, hurt, hurt, hurt. Pagar, paid, paid, paid. Poner, put, put, put. Montar, ride, road, ridden. Llamar, ring, run, run, run. Vender, sell, sold, sold. Enviar, send, send, send. Establecer, set, set, set. Gastar, spend, spend, spend. Robar, steal, stole, stolen. Entender, understand, understood, understood. Prohibir, forbid, forbid, forbidden. Superar, overcame, overcome, overcame, overcome. Tratar, deal, dealt out. Poder, can, could. Caer, fall, fell, fallen. Colgar, hen, hon, hung. Oír, hear, hurt, hurt. Esconderse, hide, hid, hidden. Liderar, lead, led, led. Prestar, lend, lend, lend. Renunciar, quit, quit, quit. Escalar, rise, rose, reason. Disparar, shoot, shoot, shoot. Sentarse, sit, 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 sat, set. Estar de pie, stand, stot, stot. Enseñar, teach, teach, taught, taught. Lanzar, throw, to, thrown. Vestir, wear, worn, worn. Buscar, seek, sought, sought. Oler, smell, smell, smelt. Deletrar, spell, spelt, spelt. Golpear, beat, beat, beat. Apostar, bet, bet, bet. Aferrarse, clean, clon, clon. Sostener, hold, hold, hold. Encender, light, lit, lit. Significar, mean, meant, meant. Mostrar, show, show, shown. Escupir, spit, spit, spit. Hundir, sing, sing, song. Huir, flee, fled, fled. Arrollarse, nil, nil, nil. Picar, sting, stone, stone, stone. Colocar, late, late, late. Mentir, light, light, light. Apestar, sting, sting, stung. Morder, bite, bit, bitten. Inclinar, lean, lend, lend. Nacer, bir, born, born. Doblar, bend, bend, bend. Criar, brind, brand, brand. And we continue with the passive voice level 1. The passive voice is used when we want to give importance to action instead of the person who performs the action. In this level, the structure is very clear and simple. It follows this order: subject, verb to be, and past participle. The subject is usually it when the id is singular, or they when the id is plural. Then we choose the correct form of the verb to be. Depending on the tense, in present, we use is for singular and are in plural. In past, we use was for singular and were for plural. And in the future, use will be for both singular and plural. Finally, we add the past participle of the main verb, because every passive voice sentence must end with the verb in past participle. Using the verb to win as an example, we can say it is won, it was won, it will be won. And for plural, they are won, they were won, and they will be won. Now, we'll create some examples to show how these forms change depending on the tense. It is now, It was known, it will be known, it is proposed, it was proposed, it will be proposed. It is expected, it was expected, it will be expected. It is applied, it was applied, it will be applied. They are analyzed, they were analyzed, they will be analyzed. I will talk about passive voice level 2. This level focuses on giving greater importance to the object where the action falls, rather than the person who performs the action. As I mentioned earlier, it is a structure that centers on giving greater importance to the object where the action falls. Here, the structure changes completely and becomes object, verb to be conjugated depending on the tense and number, and a past participle and a optional complement. So first we start with this object because in the passive voice level 2, the object becomes the new subject. Then we add the verb to be, which must be conjugated according to the tense, present, past, of, or future. Also, depending on whether the object is singular or plural. After that, we include the past participle and the main verb, which is always necessary to complement the passive voice tense. Finally, if we want, we can add, complement, or mention who performs the action by using by. Some examples are: the variable is indefinite, the variable was indefinite, the variable will be indefinite. The samples are measured, the samples were measured, the samples will be measured. The process is controlled, the process was controlled, the process will be controlled, the results are evaluated, the results were evaluated, the results will be evaluated. The data are compared, the data were compared, and the data will be compared. Next, we move to prepositional verbs. These are verbs that always go together with one specific preposition. For example, depend on, belong to, or carry about. Their meaning changes if we change the prepositions, so it is important to memorize them as a complete expressions. Verb, preposition, and complement. These verbs are very common in English and help us express relationships between idioms. I will now read some examples. She works in finance, he works on a new things, and they work at Samsung. Look at the screen. Your result depends on your effort. He suffers from errors. We are waiting for the bus. They arrived in Mexico. We arrived at the airport. I agree with my teacher. We agree on the solution. I care about my friends. He cares for her. I think of you often. Let me think about the problem. She applied for a new position. He applied to the university. She borrowed a pencil from her. Focus on the instruction. We must deal with the issue. He knows a lot about science. I paid for the tickets. I need to talk to you. She talked with her partner. The director will speak to their then. I spoke with my teacher. Don't worry about the exam. They laughed at the joke. She smiled at me. Finally, we have the phrasal verbs. A phrasal verb is formed by a verb and particle, which might be prepositions or an adverb. Together, they create a meaning that is sometimes very different from the meaning of the individual word. Some phrasal verbs can be separate and some cannot depending on the structure. These verbs are extremely common in the everyday English, and learning them have use on studying native speakers more easy. I will read the examples: how break into, give up, hand out, hold on, call off, small show off, look for, look into, look after. And some examples for these phrasal verbs are: they Fiefos broke into the house at night. She looks after her little brother every afternoon. I am looking for my case. The police will look into the problems. Hold on, please, I need on more minute. He gave up smoking last year. They hang out at the park afternoon. He likes to show off his new car. The teacher called off the class because of the rain. Please come down and tell me what happened. The planet will take off in 10 minutes. I made a mistake, so I will do the project over. I can't figure out this math problem. Please turn up the volume. I can't hear. Turn down the music. It's too loud. She turned it on the computer. And don't forget to turn off the lights.